mud for footprints. And in fact, Jim Mordecai brought some cast here to take plaster and fill in the footprint and get some get a picture of what the footprint looks like. And so these are some of the things we look for: tracks, footprints in the mud. Okay. All right. That's just a picture of one that we found over near Painter, Oklahoma, along a road where something heavy had pressed down the dirt on the road. Okay. You see the footprint there? Look how large the toes are. Yeah, that was over Detention Refuge. Okay. Now, we decided to try something different, and so last month, Ryan volunteered to make a plaster cast of his foot. He wears a 10.5, I believe. Is that right? Yes. 10.5 size shoe. This is Ryan's footprint that we cast. You compare this footprint to something like this. See how narrow the human foot is with smaller toes? You also get a picture of the arch there. So that gave us something to compare a human footprint against some of these other footprints that we find. Look at the differences. And we have one of the footprints that we'll pass around later so you can get an up-close look at it. Okay? So this is the footprint that's found in the mud there at Stinchcombe versus Ryan's footprint. You can see the arch of his foot here, and you can see his heel here. If you notice some differences, what are some differences here between this footprint and this footprint? Yes, sir.
The big footprint is a bit flat.
Right, yeah, it's wide, flat. Yes, sir. Yes, big toes, big wide toes. Yes. Yes, sir.
The human foot is like a little bit narrower, and the one is like a little bit.
Very good. Right. Yeah. And it's very flat. You don't see the arch. Very good. Okay. Next slide. Oh, also, forgive me, if you look at the Bigfoot one, it's deep. It's really pressed into the soil. Dr. Meldrum, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, he's a professor at Idaho State University. He specializes in animal footprints, animal tracks, feet, that sort of thing, and the evidence that wildlife leaves when it walks. And so he has theorized that the Sasquatch foot is hinged in the middle. It makes a hinge there. You see, we have this high arch bone. We have a high arch bone. They have more of a flat foot. And they're so heavy that to support the weight, the foot has to be hinged in the middle. So we're looking. Yes, it is. Okay. What we're looking for out there, okay, what we're looking for is things that look out of place, that look different, that doesn't look quite right when you're looking for evidence. Okay. Okay. Here in this footprint. You know, and we're not saying that every footprint is a Sasquatch footprint, but ones that look really interesting, you can see how this ridge in the middle here and some big wide toes at the top. Okay. What do you think about this footprint? What do you think about that footprint? It's in the sand there on a sandbar. It's a long print. It's nearly 12 inches long. But it's also very narrow. It does have some big toes. I don't know, but that's the kind of things we're looking at. Just interesting. Okay? What's different about this print? You see how large he is? This is a 12-inch ruler. It's way down here. It's also very deep pressed into the soil there. And then there's some areas where we can see what's called dermal ridges. You know, like your fingerprint on the bottom of your foot, you have these little whorls of skin, surface of your skin, and those are called dermal ridges. And so we look for those in the bottom of footprints. So that's a fair, and you see the big toe pressed in up there? That's some of the toes. But the camera doesn't show, but that print was about that deep. Okay? here's another one. What do you notice about that one? See how deep it is? Yes. Uh-huh. So, anyway, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I was going to show the dermal ridges in that. If you look, these striations here, the dermal ridges, so you can see where the skin contacted with the soil. And that also is very deep. I'll show you one of the slides where I'm standing on wet mud in a boot, and I can't sink, and yet the track is 3 or 4 inches deep. That means something heavy walked across there. Okay? So this is what we call a trackway. This was right alongside the edge of the road. Notice it wasn't out in the road. This was Extension and Wildlife Refuge in OKC. But you can see the line of footprints going. They came out of the woods. They go about 20 yards, go back in the woods, where there wasn't a trail, just woods along the edge. And one thing I noticed that caught my attention when I was walking through there is how deep they were. But also, do you know something weird about this line of footprints? What do you notice about that line of prints? Yes, sir. It's very straight. You know, when we walk, you know, if you just normally walk, our feet are going like this, out to the side. What do you notice about that line of prints?
Car.
Yeah, it looks like somebody walking a road like this. The people don't normally walk like this. But that's one of the characteristics the researchers have said they noticed with trackways of Sasquatch prints or Bigfoot prints is that they go in almost a straight line. For some reason, they tend to walk like a tightrope walk. So anyway, that's just something that caught my attention. Because out there, you know, you would find lots of human prints, and usually they're walking on the road to the left. But this was walking in, whatever it was walking in the ditch, walked down the ditch for a ways in the back of the woods. So it's just interesting. Just something that jumped out and caught my attention there. Okay? This is what I was talking about. This is a mud bank along the river. That's my boot. And I'm 165 pounds. I'm barely pressing in the soil. You see how deep that print is? There's even water in the bottom. Bye-bye, baby. And you can definitely see the toes, and that's a smaller one. My boot's a 10. But just how deep that print is just amazing compared to, you know, I can barely press the soil, and the toes just stand out perfect. So that's just interesting. That's the kind of things we're looking for. Okay? Here's a close-up of that print. What do you see in that photo? Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's really deep. So that means whatever was standing there, whatever stepped there is really heavy. Yes, sir. Yeah, you see the big toe, and you see the tips of the toes up there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay. These are some collection of casts at a conference I went to. A fellow had a collection of casts there, and I just thought it was interesting, all the different types of casts. This one is even a cast with like thumbprint and fingers pressing into the soil there. Okay? So you just kind of get an idea of the different sizes of prints and different footprints there. He even had a hand print from where one put his hand down. And of course I need more scale there, but that is a huge hand. Okay. And when we were at the conference last year in October, Jim Mordecai, in fact, Jim, you might just tell the story of these prints and show everybody these prints that were found down on Honaby Creek. Kind of tell them how they were found, casting process.
Well, we were at the Christ 40 Acres Catholic Christian Mission up in Honaby, Oklahoma. That's where we have our conference every year. And a couple of days before the conference, one of the guys at the mission up there was hunting, and he came across some footprints. And so they knew that I was doing a casting demonstration for our conference. I had all the equipment and stuff that we needed for that. We went down there to cast, and these are some of the best cast footprints that I've seen in a very, very long time. As far as the casting process, you can use a couple of different things. You use plaster of Paris, you can use hydrocal, you can use some other things like that, but for the most part, we just use plaster of Paris. We found the tracks down in this muddy area, but there wasn't any mud in it, so it was pretty dry. Then we poured plaster in it, and then hardened it for about 30 minutes. And this is what we came up with. This one you can see, you've got all the toes straight across here, about 16 inches long, about 8 inches wide, 9 inches wide. A Bigfoot footprint. The interesting thing is usually the toes, pretty much for the most part, go straight across. Like our human toes, they go all the way like this. They go usually point down. What he's talking about, the metatarsal break. You can see the foot right here, it sort of hinges. So they can actually, sometimes when we're out on expeditions and things like that, and there's a big sheer cliff, they can just walk straight up that cliff because that foot bends. Ours doesn't bend, and they can just walk right straight up like it's nothing. This is the one that we cast. I've got some other prints up here. We were talking earlier about the Patterson-Gimlin film, the 1967 film. These are actually some copies made from the Patterson-Gimlin film. So these are her footprints. And this one we'll have up here. We'll let you hold it or whatever. And then right down from where we found the first print, we found another one. This was on very shallow sand, but you can still see how wide it is. Still saw the toes and the width. Another interesting thing about this is the first one I showed you, we have a secondary one. It's sort of busted up a little bit, but this one was on an incline. So basically, it was ramped up like that, and she was touching, wouldn't press it down like this. When the Bigfoot did that, the foot slid. And that's one thing I love about footprints, is seeing if they're real or not, or fake, or whatever. These have so many different characteristics in it. This one, there's a 6-inch slide. And then you can actually see where the toes came back in, where she got her grip. And why it's like she, the female Bigfoot's third toe, or heels, tend to be a little narrower than the males. I don't know why, but they're a little wider. The male's more pretty much the same shape all the way down. But I'm saying this one was probably about 7.5 foot tall, and probably weighed a good 500-600 pounds. I weigh over 250 pounds. I stepped in the same mud that this was in. I only went down about that far. This one just stepped right down in the middle of it and was down pretty deep. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Jim. Okay. Thanks, Kurt. This was a picture of where that cast was made. That's where the print was found, in the mud there. Okay. And then this is the other one that Jim was talking about that was more on the drier soil of the upper bank of the creek there. And that's a 9-inch hunting knife. What's interesting is, do you know which way are the toes going? It's odd. The toes are splayed off to the right there. They're not straight. Any guesses why the toes are going in a different direction, or a weird direction? I don't know. Jim, was there any debate on that or discussion?
Only unless if the creature turned,
yeah,
and when it was walking, maybe turned this way a little bit and looked that way. Because in those prints, if you look at the full trailway, one of them sort of goes like they was going to go down this trail, and then it veered off to the other side. So,
okay.
So that's very possible. I could have seen something, and it slid a little bit, and then they came back. But
yeah. And like Jim was saying, whenever we look at these footprints, we're trying to decide, did somebody fake this? Or could this be, if somebody was gonna fake this print, why would they, why would they bother to make toes go in a weird direction? I mean, so that's some of the things we look at, some things we look for when we're looking at them. Also notice how wide and flat, like we talked about, that the print is. Yes, sir?
They also might be twisted or snapped.
Yeah, it could have an injury to their
Yeah.
foot. That's right. That's very good. And there are some prints of some casts of some footprints that show like broken toes, even knots on the side of the foot where they have an injury or something like that.
One thing you were talking about dermal ridges and things like that. For instance, they had one area that had footprints done 10, 15 years ago, and they could see a scar line on the middle of that foot. And then 15, 20 years later, they see the same print of the same foot, but the foot has changed a little different, but the scar is still the same.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff we look for, use to judge prints of whether or not they're real, that sort of thing. So that gives some pretty good evidence that that's a real footprint made by a real creature. Okay? So some of the other things that we look for are, just things that stand out in the woods that you find that are weird. And this was up along the North Canadian River, actually closer to Boiling Springs State Park, near Woodward. And just happened to notice this along the river there. Looks like what we call stick structures, or it's kind of built in maybe a teepee style. But one thing I noticed was that it had been dug out at the bottom and lined with leaves and things. And then, and I went in there looking for hair, things like that, but didn't find any. But also some of those logs, that would take a while for somebody to build. I mean, that's a pretty good project there. And some of the logs were larger than what a human could carry. It might take 2 or 3 guys to carry some of those big, huge. And none of those were cut with a saw. They were all just broken pieces of wood that, and this was down in the bottomland marshy area. So just interesting. We don't know who built it or what built it, but it certainly was odd, certainly stuck out. It was in an area with, we look at other things around, it was in an area where there was lots of deer tracks everywhere. So what possible uses could they have for a structure like that? Okay?
To hunt deer.
Yeah, could be a hunting blind, okay?
Maybe some campers hold it and just hunt it.
Maybe so, and that's something that we talk about also. There's a lot of groups now, a lot of folks that do the survival training. Maybe it was a group of folks like that built it. We don't know exactly who built it, but it's certainly odd. And like I said, some of the pieces were so big and heavy, it would take more than one person to move them. So just interesting kind of stuff. And we find other kinds of stick structures in the woods and forests all over the state. Okay? This was down at Honabi on an expedition in 2015 out in the mountains, the Kaimishi Mountains. That's my brother Keith on the left and Marvin Leeper, who's a professor down at Tishomingo. This little oak tree was off the side of the road a ways in a stand of trees and all by itself, and it had been twisted. If you go to the next slide, Kurt, it'll show you that. Yeah, that was not pulled down, and it was not sawn or cut. Something had actually grabbed that little tree, which was about this big around, about 4 foot off the ground, grabbed that tree and twisted it over. Just trying to imagine the strength that it would take to twist an oak tree and pull it over like that. We tried to look around and see, was there storm damage? But that was the only tree in that little area that had been done like that. We just thought that was very interesting. You could tell where something had drifted and literally twisted that tree over. But you can see where it split there and all that. Just interesting. Okay. This was also down at Home Nubby. But some other things that we look for that stand out along the road, there's actually a trail that goes back through there. And what's interesting is by this trail, this tree had been snapped over, and then those two pieces laid across the entrance of the trail. And we find stick structures like that and formations like that in a lot of the woods. Stuff that looks odd and stands out. You're going along there and just all of a sudden that's just there. It just looks odd, and you just try to figure out what might have caused that. Is it some type of symbol that they use? Does it mean don't use this trail, or this is a territorial marker? We just don't know. But we find these kind of formations and things quite often in areas where we think there's activity. I don't know, guys, any ideas? I mean, it means something to them, but also my brother and I had walked this particular road a day earlier, and about every 100 yards back in the woods, whack, a tree knock as we went along the road there. Tree knocks, are they a warning? Say that there's humans in the area, look out, watch out, be on guard. But all the way there and all the way back. In fact, whenever we pulled in and parked our car and got out, before we even closed the door on the car, we heard what we call rock clacks. Two real loud and real close in the woods. Whack, whack. And it was like, is it a warning? Is it from them to know that, okay, there's people here now? This was in the middle of the afternoon, so just really interesting. We kind of listen and look for things like that. Kind of gives you an idea. Because I don't know what else out in the woods knocks on trees. What else uses rocks? That was a real rocky area, creek bottom. Just odd. Okay. This was over at Stinchcombe, over in northwest Oklahoma City. This was a large tree bow. You see me standing there. But what you can't see, I should have taken a picture of that, was taking greenbrier vines, and if you've ever seen greenbrier vines, they have thorns, lots of thorns, and they literally wrapped the greenbrier vines around the top of that tree and tied it down with greenbrier. That was odd. Of course, there's lots of other trees out there that have been over because of storms. We've had in the past ice storms and tornadoes and things like that. But this was a green tree, still had green leaves on it. It had been bent over the trail, and the top of it tied down with greenbrier vine. A lot of greenbrier vine literally wrapped around it and tied it to the ground. So that's what I was talking about, where things stick out. Yes, sir. Question. Okay. What is your fact? Very good. That's true. Yeah, we've had that happen before. Yes, sir.
And also, if it knocks like thick logs against trees and big rocks,
They sure do. Yep.
It means you're getting too close. Get away from me.
Right. Yep. That's a warning, isn't it? Yeah, we've been in situations where we've had stuff thrown at us, and screams and yells and chattering and things like that. Yeah, they don't seem to tolerate humans in their area very well, and they will do what we call intimidating behavior to try to scare you into leaving. They'd really rather not have they'd really rather not have something happen. They just want you to leave and leave them alone. So yeah, they will. They'll throw rocks and sticks. Yes, sir.
The big footprints, they remind me of the movie of Smallfoot.
Right. Yes, that's a good movie. It really is. Yeah. Even as large as these adult creatures are, they seem to want to avoid contact with humans, and they want to avoid any trouble. So they will just try to get you to move out of their area. Okay? Kurt had received some information on damage that was done to a river gauging station on the river near El Reno, and so we went out there and looked at that. And Kurt, you want to just talk a little bit about what was found and the evidence that we found there at that site.
Yeah, go on. The damage was a control panel. That's the first thing. Something had taken the whole complete lid or cover on this thing that was locked and just completely tore it off and just ripped it like it was nothing, like picking up a car. The pole that it was attached to is galvanized steel, and it is an antenna system that shoots a microwave signal over to the river headquarters, and that tells them things like the river flow, all kinds of information that they can get. And whatever did it had climbed up, grabbed it, and bent the whole pole at the thickest place possible. They just bent it over like it was nothing. And the part that hits me, it was probably, it happened in December, I believe. They know exactly what time of day it happened because when they lost their signal, they know exactly to the second what time that signal's lost. And it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, I forgot the exact. So put yourself on the river at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. It's dark. There's nobody around. The sandburs are everywhere. It's December. It's cold. And you've got barefoot prints all around this area. They found we found prints. So for somebody to come out, take their shoes off, walk in the sandburs, and it's cold, and tear that apart and bend that pole over, it makes me think it must have been something else besides a couple of kids. Yeah.
Have y'all found any bones of Bigfoot?
Have we what?
Found any bones of Bigfoot?
Not that we are aware of. Some skeletal remains have been found. That goes into a whole different category about giants. In the Bible, it says giants walked the earth, or they came from the earth. They were in the earth. That's one of the biblical statements made. I don't know of any particular bones that we have right now, but on the other hand, there's a lot of animals like bears, and you don't find the remains. They're just not there. Deer, I know a lot of deer hunters. Rarely do they ever find remains of anything, especially bear. It's very, very strange. But no, that was a good example of what power these things must possess, is the way they tore that thing up. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and the interesting thing was this system was electrified. So whatever was messing with that, if it was people, there was a real danger of them getting electrocuted. So just interesting the damage that was done to that, because it was built to withstand storms, floods, and something that was really strong to just rip that right off the front. You can see the front open, the front of it here open, where it was ripped away. And the pole, it wasn't bent near the ground; it was bent over. Well, you can kind of project from the way Jody's looking at the pole there, how tall it was where it was bent over. So, just interesting. But there are some theories talking about bones. There are some folks, and there are some encounter stories about that these creatures actually bury their dead. So that could be a reason why, and that they guard their graves. So it could be reasons why we don't find a lot of bones. And there have been, like Kurt said, giant bones found that have been they're trying to decide what those were from. Yes, sir.
Maybe Bigfoot ruined that thing.
That's what we're thinking. This was also and you've seen steel T-posts, you know, that make fences out of and around pastures and things. Can you imagine the strength it would take? This was one of our teams that found this back in 2007 that was in the area. This was near Oklahoma. Found where the T-post was literally bent over like a horseshoe. That's amazing. Yes, sir.
It kind of looks like it's part of a train track, but
Right.
it's bent.
It does. Yes, sir.
And you know, a bear is an enemy to Bigfoot.
I don't know how they get along with bears. Maybe they, I don't know if they share territory or challenge each other. Or there are bears where, down in southeast Oklahoma, where there's a lot of bears, where there's also a lot of reports of Bigfoot, so they must kind of get along okay. Yes, ma'am.
It looks like a horseshoe.
I know, it's bent into a horseshoe. Can you imagine how strong you would have to be to bend a steel T-post into a shape like that? That's just the kind of things that we look for that, you know, kind of stick out and look odd, and you wonder how did that happen? Okay. This was an image taken by a FLIR. In fact, it was taken by this. Kurt took this image in this FLIR, and this FLIR is like a little telescope, but what it picks up is body heat, and the body heat shows up as white. You can set it for fluorescent colors, whatever color you want to show up as the hot color, but it was set to white. So black images around it are colder, white images are giving off heat. And we were standing on the bridge, looking down at the riverbank. You can see the top of the riverbank up at the top of the picture, and there's all kinds of brush and trees and stumps and things. And this image was taken of something. Of course, it was dark. We couldn't see with just our bare eyeballs. There was something sitting in the brush along that river just watching us. And we watched it. I don't know, how long did we stand there?
A long time.
And
It
it
would
never-
rock back and forth.
Yeah, it would peak up, and then it would go like this. And then also, we could see in the woods up on the riverbank, there was something else walking around, like it was waiting for this one, like, come on, let's go. But this was a good shot we got of whatever it was sitting in the brush there, just watching us because we go lights out. We don't use flashlights, mainly because then it ruins your night vision, you can't see anything. But also so that we don't scare them. They don't like bright light. They will throw things at you and stuff if you start shining bright lights around where they are. But it could see us because it was watching us on the bridge as we were looking down watching it. So, people, that if you're interested in Bigfoot, there's some great books over there to read. Let's try the vocalizations. There's some other evidence that we look for. I think they're way down toward the bottom there.
Oh, just keep
Kind of
going.
like, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, keep going. Okay, well, this was an exhibition that we did during the Home Living Conference back in 2017. Kurt and some of the members of our team there went back in the mountains where we found some of the stick structures and the symbols where things have been like the tree breaks, things like that. And then also we went out and used the FLIRs and some of that equipment. Saw and heard some interesting stuff. Okay. And yeah, Kurt is the founder of the North Canyon River Project back in 2014. He was presenting a program last year. Okay. And
That's it.
there should be a couple more slides over here. Is that it? Oh, well, oops, back up.
Okay.
Oh, one of the best pieces of evidence is also sounds that they make. And if I need to, I can try to use it on my phone. But there's sounds recorded that don't sound like any other animal that you've ever heard. In fact, Texas A&M University at Kingsville, they have a database with the sounds, the vocalization, we call vocalizations of all North American wildlife. And they put this on a graph and graph it by the megahertz of the sound. And they have taken recordings that people says this is a recording of a Bigfoot screaming, howling, that sort of thing, and they compare it to all the known wildlife, coyotes, wolves, moose, everything, and they're kind of saying, we don't know what made that sound. Okay, let's see if that will apply. Can you hear that? Owl. One thing you notice on this graph is it's called a spectrogram. You'll hear the dogs barking, stir up the dogs. The dogs barking is a higher decibel. This howl is low. So it's just interesting. Texas A&M could not identify what creature that came from. Okay, and then got one more here. This is some other sounds that they have been known to make. Oops, let me start this one over again. Okay. This is from Michigan, 2012. Starts high and moves down.
Our friends and fellow researchers from that live and do a lot more southeast Oklahoma research than we do. This is what you hear down here. They're very quiet around central Oklahoma, where I've been out many, many nights. You'll hear monkey sounds. It sounds like monkeys. You'll hear. There's been imitations. I've heard a lot of that where something's trying to imitate an owl or a rooster or something else, or imitate a coyote, but it's just not right. You can just tell. It's like, wow, I hear a coyote over here. I grew up hearing them, but that coyote don't sound right. You know what I mean? I'm going to play one from southeast Oklahoma.
Let me stop this one. Yeah, one thing I want to say is, down in the, like Kurt said, up around this area, they don't make a whole lot of sound. We don't hear a lot of howls, screams, whoops, or anything like that. But down around the Honolulu area, or down in southeast Oklahoma, where the forest is much thicker, and they're out more in the wilderness area, they tend to be more vocal, make a lot more noise. And when we got too close and they got upset, then the sound that Kurt has there, that's the sound that we heard. You could tell they were more upset. You actually hear it echoing off the hills down there. Yeah, they were, I call them screamers. They were more screamers. They were more upset down there. Anyway, got just a couple of minutes here. Do you have any questions or observations, or does anybody have an encounter story? Yes, ma'am.
Is there any evidence of you have your footprint maybe?
Right, we have found footprint sets where there's a larger, like 12, 14-inch print, and then alongside those or near those we have like a 9 or 8-inch print. There's lots of eyewitness reports of larger ones and smaller ones, or them carrying a smaller one, that sort of thing. So yeah, there is. Oh, okay. real closely and see, do they more match a human footprint, or they do more look like like Bigfoot? You know, and how we got interested in this, you know, you know, for me, it was just growing up hearing lots of stories. I grew up southeastern Oklahoma. I heard stories of Momo. I heard stories of the Lake Eufaula monster, of the Boggy Creek monster. Got me fascinated. And then when I was a little one, like in elementary school, middle school, they would have book fairs. And I still have this book that I ordered about Bigfoot. This is like copyright 1974. So it got me interested in reading about them and fascinated. And then as I got older, I began to look for witness encounters, stories, you know, from military, law enforcement, credible eyewitness encounters, and so that's, you know, from going on expeditions, seeing the evidence for myself. Curtis had several sightings, a couple of really good sightings over in the El Reno area. Then we, you know, we're convinced that these creatures exist. How they escape, how they hide from us so well, you know, it's their living room. They know. But anyway, any more questions? Okay, I think possibly we have a visitor. Yeah. All right. How are you doing, sir? Okay. Well, if you'd like to visit with Mr. Bigfoot here and get your picture made with him, then he would be happy to do that. Okay? Thank you all for coming. If you have questions or stories you want to tell us, we're here. Thanks.